Punnett squares are used to predict the offspring of a genetic cross. In this video, we're going to review and practice this skill. In the previous video, we laid out 5 different steps for solving a Punnett square. On each of the problems that you do, you are going to have an organizer similar to the one that you see down at the bottom. Step number 1 is to make a key. And you can see on the organizer that we'll be putting that right there. The second step is to write the genotypes of the parents. Now this is going to be in the problem, and we are going to restate them in letters right there. Then we're going to set up and solve our Punnett square. That's going to happen here. And last, we will write the genotypic ratios and the phenotypic ratios. The genotypic ratios will go here. Remember that our genotypes are the letter combinations, and the phenotypic ratios, those are going to be the traits that we're going to see, and we will need to look at the key to figure out what those will be. Stop the video and write those 5 steps on your notes so that as you are working through the problems, you can always look back and know the steps that you should be following. Let's use these 5 steps to solve a problem. In humans, having dimples is dominant over having no dimples. Cross a heterozygous person with a homozygous recessive person. The first thing I need is my key. My key is going to tell me what is dominant and recessive. And this first sentence here tells me that dimples are dominant over having no dimples. If dimples are dominant, that means they are going to be the capital letter. So over in the key, big A is going to be dimples, and little a is going to be no dimples. Now we already knew this because this is an example that we have used before. Now I need the genotypes of the parents. It says cross a heterozygous person with a homozygous recessive person. Heterozygous means mixed in the zygote. Remember, hetero means mixed. So that means one of each kind of letter. That's going to be a big A and a little a. The second parent is homozygous recessive. Remember that the prefix homo means same, so it's same in the zygote, and it is both recessive. So that means my second parent is going to be little a. So step 2 is done. Step 3 is to set up and solve the Punnett square. To do that, I am going to take parent number 1, big A, little a, and I'm going to put one of each of their alleles on the Punnett square. I'm going to take the second parent and I'm going to put one of each of their alleles on the Punnett square. And then I'm going to solve. So it's set up, I'm going to solve. Big A is going to go in each one of the squares in its row. So I'm going to have a big A here and a big A here. This little a is going to pass its genes, its alleles, onto this square. So a little a here and a little a here. This parent's alleles, little a, is going to go here and going to go here. And little a is going to go here and go here. So these are my 4 genotypes of my offspring. Each one of these boxes represents a zygote. So step number 4 is to find the genotypic ratios. Now these genotypic ratios are of the offspring, and because of that, we're going to look directly into our Punnett square to find these. First, I'm going to look for my homozygous dominant. That's the big A combination. And when I look in the Punnett square, I can see that there are no big A combinations. That means that 0 out of 4 are homozygous dominant. My next genotype is heterozygous, big A, little a. When I look into the square, I can see 2 of those, one here and one here. So that's 2 out of 4 that are heterozygous. I have one last genotype that's homozygous recessive, little a. I see one little a here and one little a here. That's 2 out of 4 are homozygous recessive. The last step in solving a Punnett square is to write in the phenotypic ratios. So first I'm going to write the phenotypes in. I'm going to look to the key for that. I know that my dominant phenotype is dimples. I know that my recessive phenotype is no dimples. Now I need to use the genotypic ratios to help me find out how many of each of those phenotypes I'm going to have. In order to have dimples, I need to have a dominant allele, which is the big A. I can see that there are dominant alleles here. However, there aren't any offspring that have that, but there are 2 offspring that have big A, little a. So 2 out of the 4 of the offspring are going to be dimpled. Now, this guy right here has a little a, my homozygous recessive. There's no dominant allele there, which means that it's going to have the recessive phenotype, which is no dimples. That is 2 out of the 4, no dimples. So now we have our solution. If we cross a heterozygous person with a homozygous recessive person, we get genotypic ratios of their offspring, which is 2 out of 4 heterozygous, 2 out of 4 homozygous recessive, and 2 out of 4 will have dimples, 2 out of 4 will have no dimples. Let's try a second problem. In humans, having dimples is dominant over having no dimples. Cross a heterozygous person with a heterozygous person. So the first thing I'm going to do is my key, and it's telling me that dimples is dominant. So big A is dimples, and little a is no dimples. So we're using the same key. Second, I'm going to find my parents. I'm crossing a heterozygous person with a heterozygous person. Heterozygous is big letter, little letter, and I've got big letter, little letter for the second parent as well. Next, I'm going to set up my Punnett square. I'm going to take the first parent and put each of their alleles on the rows of the Punnett square. And I'm going to take the second parent and put each of their alleles on the top of each of the columns. Now I'm going to solve the Punnett square. So I'm going to put my genes in place. And now that I've solved my Punnett square, I am going to fill out my genotypic ratios. I'm looking for big A. Big A, I have 1 of those. I'm looking for big A, little a, my heterozygous. I have 2 of those. And my little a, I have 1 of those. The last thing that I'm going to do are my phenotypic ratios. I know that dimples is the dominant phenotype and no dimples is the recessive phenotype. Again, I can see those 2 phenotypes in my key. In order to have dimples, you have to have a dominant allele. There are dominant alleles in this genotype and dominant alleles in this genotype. So I'm going to combine these together. That's 2 plus 1. That means 3 out of the 4 have dimples. And I am going to look at my little a, no dominant allele there. 1 out of the 4 will have dimples. So this is my solution. When I cross a heterozygous person with a heterozygous person, I will get 1 big A, 2 big A, 1 little a, and my phenotypic ratios will be 3 out of 4 dimples and 1 out of 4 no dimples. Now you have some practice problems in your packet. Go ahead and practice each of those problems. The key is posted on Schoology, and when you are finished with your assignment, you can submit your completed document onto Schoology.